Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. This podcast is brought to you by BOCO Gear, a Boulder-based custom headwear company named after Boulder, Colorado. BOCO Gear was founded by Kay Martin and born out of her learnings during her more than 25-year career in the outdoor industry. If you've been running trail or ultra races for the last few years, there's a pretty high chance you own a BOCO hat or two. I have almost a dozen of the hats, and they're definitely my favorite headwear. And early in the pandemic, they even started producing high-quality face masks. Check them out at bocogear.com. That's BOCO gear.com. And there's a style for everyone. Make sure to grab 20% off any non-sale item with the code FTLR on their website. Welcome back. I have Mikel Haggadone joining me on the podcast today. Mike, thanks for taking some time to chat.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. I've been hoping our paths would cross at some point down the line, so I'm happy it could occur through audio, and hopefully we can meet in person down the line. So thanks so much for having me on.
Of course, I was almost driving near your state of Michigan recently, and it would have been lovely to meet up. But I guess we'll have to save that for a post-pandemic world where we can run some trails and share some beers and all that good stuff. But in the meantime, I'm excited to have you on. And before we dive too far into it, who is Mikel?
Oh, starting abstract.
It can be abstract. It can be literal, however you want.
Well, I pride myself on having my hand in many things. So I generally consider myself to be more of a generalist. Professionally, I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Michigan. My doctoral work is in immunology. But even so, that means I'm a scientist and a researcher. But even in that professional domain, I wear many hats. I consider myself to be an educator and a mentor and a student advocate. And then in my personal life, of course, I'm a runner. Consider myself to be an ultra runner, though I haven't run an ultra in almost 2 years. So take that with a grain of salt. And then also I consider myself to be a mental health advocate and maybe more than anything else, a friend. I really cherish my relationships with people. So that's probably what I would say in general.
Very cool. So recently you shared an article in iRunFar. Do you want to talk a little bit about the motivation behind that and sort of what was the 15-second overview of what you talked about there?
Yeah, well, the motivation, so I guess to back up kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, I have probably a 5 or 6 year history of being challenged with mental illness. And I'd gone through a pretty long period of being like really stable and feeling really great in life. And then the pandemic hit and I started to experience, depressive episodes again. And it was getting to be really challenging. And I had been told a couple of years ago that I experienced symptoms that are consistent with bipolar disorder. That was told to me by my therapist. And I had kind of resisted a formal diagnosis and getting medication for a long time. But, kind of all of that is to say, like in the fall, I decided it was time to go on medication. And that was also with the encouragement of my coach, David Roche, who of course you and I share. And so the piece, like I'm always someone, I struggle to articulate myself like in spoken word. Like even doing podcasts like these are uncomfortable for me to some extent. But I always feel like I really express myself best in writing. And so after I received the diagnosis, I just kind of sat down with the intention of writing, not with any like intent or purpose. I had really no explicit intent to publish the piece. I just wanted to write, my thoughts and to process this diagnosis and to process taking medication, which for me was like a pretty big step. So I wrote the piece and I think in some ways it is like an articulation of my thoughts about having bipolar disorder and trying to normalize what is a highly stigmatized mental illness. And then I love writing in general, but especially about how running intertwines with life. And I of course wanted to articulate what running means to me, especially in the context of this diagnosis of having bipolar disorder and what it provides me at a deeper level. So I think that's kind of the short take home from the essay.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned there is how running intertwines with life. In the article, in the essay, you talked about sort of exploring your why, and like, why do we do these things that are uncomfortable and sometimes painful? And I think it's sort of not a microcosm of life, but it's a sandbox, right? Like you can. I was talking with KK Fisher, who runs 250 plus mile races. I guess it's hiking. Anyway, she does these things. You know, I've barely run 250 miles in a month, and she goes out and does that in a couple days. And so I asked her, like, why? Why do you do these things? And her answer was, I imagine something similar to what many people listening might experience, where you can screw up in running and the consequences are not that dire unless you're, on the top of a mountain, you fall off or whatever. But generally, like if you blow up in a race or if you DNF or whatever, it's failure, but there's no consequence, right? She said the difference is, if I fail as a mother or whatever it might be, there are consequences for that. And so this is a sandbox that allows us to sort of test our limits and explore how to do more and how to be better without fear of failure.
Yeah, I mean, in my doctoral work, everything feels so consequential. Like especially in this last year, I've got a pretty hard deadline. I need to be out by August, and like every experiment feels so consequential, and like that's been really challenging for me to navigate emotionally. And along with that, like I often feel like I have to project a version of myself like in this space that sometimes isn't very authentic. Like I have to project myself as being put together and being confident and being intelligent. And like some days I don't have that. And like running is this beautiful space where like you said, it's a sandbox. Like I get to go and play. And my motivations honestly aren't much deeper than that. Like they've changed over time. Like when I got into the sport, my why is very different from what it is now. And it's like, it's the space where I just get to be authentically myself. Like I get to feel whatever I want to feel. I get to be however I want to be. I don't need to project a version of myself that isn't true to the moment. And that has just been so incredibly rewarding. And like every morning I get up and I want to go. Like I want to go explore those parts of myself and just tune into how I'm feeling on that particular day. It really is a gift. And like I found running in graduate school, and that's no coincidence for that very reason.
Where did that come from? How did you go for your first run?
Well, so as I said, I mean, my motivations have changed over time. When I first got into the sport, it was literally just to try to get back in shape. Like most people in undergrad, I focused so myopically on my studies that I just let myself go physically and emotionally. And certainly I think that motivation to get into the sport was originally motivated through physical aspirations, but quickly became emotional. Like it's of course like the first like few runs when you go out, you feel terrible and you have to really push through some discomfort when you get into the sport. But after a while, you start realizing just how freeing it can be to move and to tune in very simply to the beating of your feet on the ground. I mean, it's just such a meditative process, and so I think that's really what got me into running. I would say like when I first got into ultra running, I don't know if that was my motivations were so pure. Like I really got into the sport to project an image of myself, and I don't regret that. I don't blame that person. That was a natural reaction to what I was experiencing at the time. But as I've progressed throughout the sport, like I realize, how little like the outcomes actually matter, and how much of a gift it is just to be, like to very simply just to be.
Yeah, I think that as you shared, the evolution is always interesting to follow. Like a lot of people get into it for the health benefits, and then sort of find find a new why as they, get through the like first 4 weeks that generally suck when you start running or restart running. So I'm curious about that component. You said your initial intent wasn't so pure. Talking about that, and what was the image that you were hoping to be projecting?
Yeah, I've never really talked about this before, so it's good. So a part of my story is that I actually started my PhD not at my current institution. I started at a different institution, and I left. I left after a year because of my first major depressive episode, and I just didn't feel a part of that community. And I think, like, internally, I felt immense pressure to prove myself. And I wish I could go back and tell that person, like, you're enough just as you are. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You made the hardest decision in leaving a prestigious institution for the sake of your happiness. Like, that was an amazing decision to make. But, at the time, like, I felt like I needed to prove to myself that I was strong. And to me, like, running ultra distances was a way that I felt like I could prove that to myself. But over time, like, I mean, honestly, doing a PhD is so much harder than running an ultra marathon. Like, I've found that I don't need to prove myself, in any way. Like, I don't even need to prove myself in my PhD work. I really feel like I've embraced some element of self-acceptance, but, especially in my daily work, like, I push myself so much in my research and, intellectually and creatively, that running, again, to me, it's not about proving anything to anyone now. It's about allowing myself to just be in this uninhibited space and to enjoy this gift, because it is a privilege. And I reflect on that every single day when I put on my shoes. So I think that's the evolution. As I said, when I got into sport, it wasn't necessarily an authentic desire to participate. I literally had the intention of running one ultra marathon, and I thought I would never do it again. But of course, as you can imagine, I got hooked because of those deeper reasons.
Very cool. You said something there about the self-acceptance, and you've gotten to a place where you are able to accept yourself. I think a lot of people struggle with that, and you are enough. And as we hear within SWAP all the time, like you are enough, you are perfect as is, all this. I like asking about how your response to that statement has changed over time, or if it has changed. I guess I'm curious how that evolved for you, going from not having that self-acceptance to, as you said, having it, because I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, well, I'll preface by saying that there are many days when I still really struggle with it, probably more days than not. But I've at least gotten to a place where it's functionally present. And honestly, like, David Roche has played a huge role in that. Because I used to be like, in my undergraduate work, I was like so focused on outcomes, like grades and publications and awards and whatnot. And I used to think that if I wasn't achieving any of those things, then I wasn't worth anything. And, like, that's obviously such a destructive way to live, because the moment, that house of cards falls, you're left extremely vulnerable. And that was honestly part of the problem with my first attempt at a PhD, is like, things were not really going my way in life. And I was left there questioning, like, what am I providing to the world? I think now, again, like I said, I still struggle with this, but now I just realize how much of a gift it is to be authentic with people, and to realize, like, yes, it's nice to achieve in my doctoral work. Like, it's nice to achieve in my running. And of course, like, you get affirmations that way, but that, like, you never feel any different after you achieve something. Like, that's something that I've had to learn in the last couple of years, is like, an achievement does not change how you see yourself. At least it doesn't with me. And, I'm ultimately always coming back to this idea of, like, how can I lift myself up? How can I be okay with myself, especially when the vast majority of what I do fails? Like, science is incredibly hard, and many of my experiments fail. And, running is really hard, and a lot of times I fail in running. And, how can I continue to be okay with myself in the face of that failure? And perhaps more importantly too, like, my notion of success every day is a little bit more oriented outwards towards how I make other people feel, and whether I'm facilitating other people, finding that, helping them see in themselves what I see in them, and trying to be supportive in that way. And I think, in some ways, by spreading that love to others, that kind of reflects back onto yourself too, which I've learned over time.
I love that so much. I mean, the what I see you spreading on social media is like, we need that now more than ever. You are like, we've never met in person, but you give me so much support and encouragement, and whether it's with my running or with work or with the podcast or whatever it is, like I feel that from you, and I see that from you with other people, and it's incredible to see. And I've referenced this once or twice before on the podcast, but there's a Jewish tenet that is essentially says, save one world, save a world entire, I believe is the wording, essentially saying, you help one person, you help an entire world. And this is how I try and live my life. And this is, I've seen it from, people like you and other people doing it like this, where the impact that you can have on a single person is so substantial that we should never shy away from this type of encouragement or whatever, even it takes 10 seconds to compose a tweet or send a message or whatever, but it can have such an impact. 2020 was all about adapting as runners, and also in every other aspect of life. As a sponsor of this episode, I'm proud to highlight BOCO Gear's face masks, which are a perfect complement to their hats and other headwear. Offering a double layer with a slot for a filter, these masks will help keep you and your community safer in these trying times. With dozens of styles available online, there's an option for everyone. Check them out at bocogear.com, and please wear a mask. And now back to our conversation. Another thing that you said, you never feel different after you achieve something. I think that this is that light switch or understanding is what it takes to be successful, in my opinion. I'm in a role where I'm evaluated on numbers, and success is very much measurable, and it's binary. And did I get the number? Yes. Great. Did I not get the number? No. Work harder, work smarter. David has reminded me over and over again that it's not about, and other people along the way, particularly colleagues and whatnot, they've also reminded me, and I've reminded them, that like hitting these numbers, like, it doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. It's the evolution of how you do it and how you get there and how you improve and change and tweak and optimize your process over time, so that like, those numbers are going to change. The goalposts are going to change. They're always going to move. And if you're only satisfied by hitting a number, hitting a goalpost, when you don't hit it, what happens? And so that's the life example, but it's the exact same thing in running. Like, I was so obsessed with running sub 3 in the marathon, and it didn't happen until I like gave up the need to get it, that it happened. And I think that I don't think that was a coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the same experience too. Like, I mean, in my professional life, I mean, science is so much hinged on outcomes, and I've literally had superiors tell me, like, the currency of success is papers and grants and money. And I've certainly been criticized for amplifying an alternative definition of success, because, like, people say I'm lost touch with reality. Like, you're not going to survive in science, like, without focusing on those outcomes. But, like, I truly believe, like, this is fundamental to like kind of maybe a more mystical belief for me, but like I truly believe that if you're approaching life authentically, like success flows from that.
Right.
And like that's how I approach my work as well. But it's the same with running too. Like I haven't been running that long. Like I've only been running 4 years, and like with that, I improve. I improve pretty quickly. But like when I got into racing and like trail racing, I thought, oh, the first time I win a race, it's going to be like this whole amazing thing. And I've won a few now, and like the next day, it's not like I feel really any different about myself. Like, of course, I'm proud of the accomplishment, but I think I'm internally proud of myself for pushing myself and for believing in myself. Like it's that, that pride is not attached to like any medal or award in that way. And I think it's just, it's so much more fulfilling and freeing of a way to live, because like in that case, like the journey never ends, right? Like there's never any end point. Like you always have something to look forward to. Because if there was an end point, then why are we even doing this? And of course, like one thing that David always talks about, which really resonates with me, is like our ultimate decline. Like we all will age, and like inevitably we all will die, right? And like that's, on the face of it sounds kind of morbid, but like it's a really freeing way if you just kind of let yourself go from all these expectations that you have for yourself in the now, and just allow the journey to unfold as it will. So yeah, it's something like, again, like that's something that I've had to accept in my professional life, and it informs my personal life, and that informs my professional life. And it's this really interesting crosstalk, and like this beautiful crosstalk that has helped me navigate some really low periods of time when both science and running are not going well.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is very in line with my own experience. I think that your observation around like your approach to science is similar to my approach to what I do for work, where like very early on it was like I was up till midnight working all the time, and I was glorifying the like being busy and just doing more, and that was a sign of success, that I was busy all the time. But as I've gone on, I think that it's come to a place, or come to a realization, that success is long-term progress and happiness. And I think that you can't be successful by burning yourself out. And in 2020 and 2021, it's like more important than ever to be aware of this. And yeah, you might be doing less, but if you can stay happier and whatnot, I think that leads to more productivity. I was talking with a coworker about this recently. Actually, no, it wasn't a coworker. It was somebody I was interviewing, and he was asking me about the culture of the company. And we were talking about making yourself a priority, and making time for yourself to get done what you need to get done. He was talking about CrossFit. I was talking about running. And I strongly believe that, like, by carving out time for ourselves, it's not just not selfish, it's selfless. It's being the best version of yourself for those around you is absolutely not selfish. And I think more people should prioritize themselves in that way.
Yeah, I mean, self-care is so important, and like I plan my experiments around my running, right? Like I don't plan my running around my experiments for that very reason. Like running is the most important part of the day, because if I don't get it in, like yeah, I'm not doing my best work, right? Like my best work comes when I'm feeling fresh and fulfilled, and that's been something that I've really been challenged by this last year. Like I said, having a deadline looming in front of me, I am constantly towing this line between feeling like I'm working too much and not working enough to get out when I need to, and having that acceptance, like the radical acceptance of like we need to take care of ourselves now, and whatever results from our PhD it'll be what it is, and we're going to be okay with it. So yeah, I totally resonate with that.
Awesome. What is your definition of success?
Oh, well, it's certainly not attached to any outcome. That's for sure. Honestly, like, so I think, it's probably twofold. I think first of all, like success to me is again, lifting up other people and trying to be that type of person that, amplifies other people's work and their success and, being a cheerleader on that front. I think number two, it sounds so simple, but having fun. like
Yeah.
I'm someone like throughout my entire life, like even as a kid, I am just naturally disposed towards lamenting on the negative aspects of life. Like I have a really hard time updating my beliefs in response to like positive outcomes. And that's always been a big challenge of mine. And especially more and more recently, like, I'm only 28, but I'm feeling like I'm getting kind of old. And I look back and I realize how much I've stressed so much about the little things. And I don't want to let my life get away without having fun. And that was kind of amplified. I know you and I resonated over this, but like, my grandpa recently passed away and he left a letter to be read at his funeral. And it concluded with, I had a blast in life and I hope the same for all of you. And when that was read, like the funny thing about that is it almost went in one ear and out the other. And then all of a sudden I almost jumped from my seat because I'm like, wait, that's literally everything. That's everything in life. Like he retired, he bought an RV, him and my grandma traveled the US. Like they fulfilled their dream. They had so much fun in life. And I don't know. I just, that's like a major tension for me in staying in academia is like, the kind of the trope is that you work your life away, and I don't want to do that, and I'm resolved not to do that. And so I think that might be like an ultimate measure of success for me each day is did I have fun? Did I really enjoy the day? Did I extract life from today?
Yeah, we talked about that one at length. I got the chills just hearing you say that. My grandpa shared something pretty similar in our last conversation, and to be able to have that level of self-reflection and introspection and share it, and like at the end of the day, so my grandfather's words of wisdom were the whole meaning of life is to leave the world in a better place than when you entered it. And he spent his last, I don't know, 30 years traveling. He retired and he and my grandma traveled the world, literally everywhere. Africa, Asia, all over Europe, Australia, Middle East, everywhere. And fun and adventure was paramount and number one. I have a friend who has a tattoo on his thigh, and if you're looking at him, it looks upside down. But if he's looking at it, it is a checkbox with the word "fun" next to it. And
That's so awesome.
And his goal in life is to check the box every day, and literally check the fun box because it's on his thigh. So there's some photos on social media where it's not checked, and somewhere it is checked. And I think it's like he's into wearing short shorts, and he's like 6'6", so it's a big dude with a big thigh. But you see that reminder, and it's like, yeah, that is the most important. That is one of the most important things. Like, if you're going through life not having fun, what can you do about it, right? There are some things that, we can't all enjoy our jobs, and we can't all enjoy every moment of the day or week or month or year or whatever, but you can find the joy in anything, I would hope. Hell, I spent the last 8 months like waiting for what I'm experiencing right now. I'm looking out. I'm sitting in Breckenridge. I'm looking at. I don't know. Probably on the third floor. As I was saying, I'm on the third floor, looking at these massive trees with snow on them, and I was thinking about. I had been thinking about this, basically this moment or this experience for months. I don't really know where I'm going with this, but I think that like if you aren't enjoying the moment, put something on the calendar that is fun in the future. And I think that that's what this experience is for me, that like I got through some really shitty and lonely and boring times by looking forward to something, and something that I knew would be fun. And so I think that that's helpful and impactful. Like if you're not having fun in the moment or enjoying the moment, like create a moment that's fun, and don't make it tomorrow, but put it a little further out on the calendar. And whether it's a race or whatever, I think that these anchors help so much.
Yeah, and I think it makes it so hard in the moment because we're all struggling. Like, there are very few races, right? And it's harder to meet up with friends. And like, it's just such a challenging time right now. Because that's something my therapist really emphasizes, is like, let's create opportunities that we can look forward to and we can really, really enjoy. And especially like, as I said, I'm someone who, like, my natural inclination is to lament. And, so doing that is so incredibly important. And, especially right now, like, at work, because of social distancing, I can only work in the evenings from 2 to 9 PM. And so it's like, I feel like I'm losing out so much of that opportunity to, to really enjoy like the parts of life that I normally do. But, I totally agree. It's just so important to extract joy out of the moment. And especially like, one affirmation that I continue to come back to is enjoy the beauty of this very moment, because I'm someone who tends to project into the past or into the future, and to, reflect on regrets and to worry about things that have yet to unfold. And like, I'm sitting right now on the 6th floor of a research building looking out over the city of Ann Arbor, and it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, we have snow everywhere. And like, I think in the past I probably would not have been inclined to really appreciate that. But now just having the state of mind to be present, and just to extract beauty out of everything in life, it helps, it helps so much to navigate the slog that we're all collectively going through right now.
For sure. So you mentioned some tactics that you have worked on with your therapist. Talking about getting into therapy and that process, and how and if running plays a role in that as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. To address the first part, I started going to therapy when I was at my first institution for my PhD. It was around the time that I was really having significant doubts about whether I wanted to be there. And like, of course, I went into therapy and immediately had success. Like, it took me like 3 sessions to realize I'm not in the right place in my life and I need to move. I need to go back to a place where I have friends and I have family and I can be loved. So, I'm such a proponent for therapy. And to get to the second part of your question about like where running plays into all that, running, and I'm very adamant about this, like running is not therapy. I think running is very therapeutic. Like, I think it's a really important tool in the toolbox, but it should not replace therapy. And the reason I say that, like, I've had some really interesting conversations with people who I think bring up really valid points for the contrary response. But I always come back to like something more clinical where, like, for example, when I was at my first institution, I dealt with disordered eating. And there was no way I would have ever come out of that if I didn't have someone to give me the toolbox to be mindful about my intake, right? And those are, and like the same with my bipolar disorder. Like these are actual skills and reflections, and like these conversations that you have with your therapist are incredibly revealing. That is quite separate from the peace of mind that you get in running. Again, like, I think it's an incredible part of a toolbox. And like my therapist would agree, like, one of the most effective ways that I have to ward off my hypomania is to go for a run. Like, it's an incredible tool, but it should never supplant professional help. And that's something like I'm so passionate about. Like, I believe that therapy should be made accessible to everyone, like financially and just having access to it. And that's, why I'm so passionate. I run for an organization called Bigger Than the Trail, which that's like really the core foundation is financially supporting, those who either can't afford therapy or don't have access to it locally. So it's a cause that I'm really invested in, and I believe, so strongly in professional help.
Yeah, I've talked about that one a couple of times on the podcast. I think that the biggest problem is accessibility. I have insurance and I've had issues with getting it covered recently, and it's ridiculous. It's like why is it not available for everyone? Well, I know the answer to that, but it should be. And it's such a tool that is helpful for everyone that it's great that organizations like Bigger Than the Trail exist to help with the accessibility aspect.
Yeah, and honestly, my hope is someday, Bigger Than the Trail is in addition to serving that function, is also really invested in advocacy, and like that's an important role. Awareness and advocacy is really important, separate from increasing access to. But my hope someday is that like we have a healthcare system that that makes it accessible to everyone. Like I believe it should be free and readily accessible. Like, but that requires fundamental changes to our healthcare system. Like I have no reservations about saying that I support universal healthcare, and like that's a major reason why. But yeah, my hope is that someday we don't need these nonprofits to serve this vital role, because your experience is not unique. Our founder of Bigger Than the Trail, Tommy Byrne, has spoken very openly about how it took him months from kind of intake to actually getting help to see that his needs were addressed. And so it's a major issue, and like now more than ever, with Bigger Than the Trail, we've seen our numbers go up with people who are offered therapy. Like we've seen our numbers go up significantly during COVID for obvious reasons. And now more than ever, it needs to be something that we prioritize and provide.
For sure. One thing you said that I definitely agree with, and I've said over and over again, is that running is not therapy, but it is therapeutic. How do you use running in that way?
Yeah, well, as I said, I mean, something that I've dealt with for a few years now, and I went a couple of years without having language for it. I didn't know what it was, but it's hypomania, where typically it's triggered by like stress, or it's triggered by like trying to solve a difficult problem. I have like my mind starts racing at 1,000,000 miles per hour, and I have a really hard time getting that under control. And oftentimes, like I have bad habits where I can feed it, and I become more impulsive and I become more irritable, and it's just an altered state that's not pleasant to be in. And the most effective way that I have to deal with it is to literally put on my running shoes, to not have any music, and to literally just go out and focus on my feet hitting the ground. And just being incredibly so immersed in the moment to kind of bring my mind back in. So that's like more of a functional way in which I use it. But I mean, more generally, like, I think it's just such an introspective process that it's impossible for me to go out for a run and to not come back having revealed something about how I'm feeling, right? Like, of course, like I do the body scanning, but like it's also just so rewarding from an emotional perspective. I oftentimes it's revealed to me things that are bothering me that maybe I wasn't noticing in the absence of running, or maybe I feel like I need something, a little bit more connection with people. And that was revealed to me in ways that I wouldn't have noticed, without running as well. So I think it's just so incredibly introspective and revealing to me, and just so centering too.
Yeah, I think that I agree with all of that. You said it very astutely. Switching gears a little bit, what has been your relationship with running during the pandemic?
Oh, well, it's been challenging at times. I've kind of been in a little bit of an injury cycle, which has been frustrating. I'm feeling good now for the first time in a while. But certainly at the beginning of the pandemic, I was injured, and that was part of the reason, like I was really struggling emotionally too. In the times that I have felt good, like it's been so like, I love racing. Don't get me wrong. Like I love competition, but I just love training so much. And like, in particular, like really simply, I love getting fast. Like I'm not someone who I ever really considered myself to be a fast runner. When I got into it, like that wasn't part of the definition of myself as a runner, but that was something that David has really revealed to me. So like, it's just been so fun getting fast. And like every Wednesday morning now, I get to go to the track, which like again, I'm a trail ultra runner, but I love the track for so many reasons. And like, it's so fun getting fast and just focusing on growing, like focusing on growth as opposed to like results. But that said, like I really miss like the community aspect of races. I've done one socially distanced trail marathon that had like a limited cap, and it was fun, but I didn't really, obviously I didn't get to converse with really many runners at all. And we didn't convene after the race for obvious reasons. And, for that reason, the race experience was less rewarding for me. So I really miss that community aspect, but it's just been so fun to focus on growing as a runner. And I think, the timing again, like I've had to invest more emotional space into my research, and it's allowed me the space to do that, but to still just really focus on having fun. And I think, I shared with David in my log yesterday, like it feels like that purpose and that meaning that I associate with running is like coming back, and I'm just really having fun with it again. And I don't know, that definitely hasn't always been the case. So I'm just really cherishing that freedom to do that right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, the fun component can't be overstated. It's basically the entire topic of conversation for a podcast I did with Aisha Prat-Lear, who is a 30-year-old professional mid-distance runner. And she said, I'm 30 years old, and if I wasn't having fun every day, I wouldn't still be doing this. And here's a professional athlete who is being paid to compete and win and, be her best. And we had to reschedule a podcast because she was, she got mimosas after a teammate, ran an 800 meter PR in practice. And that's right. I was like, she apologized. And I was like, don't apologize. That's fucking awesome. I was like, I'm honored that that's the, that was your, like, you were honest enough to say that. But I think it is so important. So again, switching gears, a question I like to ask and have been lately, particularly to professional runners, but I'm also interested in non-professional runners, is fast forward, and it doesn't necessarily have to be running related, but fast forward 5 to 10 years, what are you really proud of?
Well, the next 5 years of my life are going to be incredibly formative. So, I'll be finishing my PhD here, and I'll be doing my postdoc, and that's really like the last stage before I pursue a tenure track position myself. And so, fast forwarding 5 years, like I know that's going to be so incredibly challenging, and that's something I think about every day. And I have a feeling that in 5 years I'll be incredibly proud of sticking that out and committing myself to what's meaningful, because I'm in this space where I still don't really know what I want to do with my life. And like, I know like some people are going to be listening and they're 35 or 40 and they say, well, I still don't know either. And, and I'm only 28, but like, I really don't know what I want. Like, do I want to commit my life to research entirely? Do I want to commit my life to teaching entirely? Do I want to have a balance of both? And, with that being said, like I'm going into this next stage of my life open to making that decision. So kind of anticipating and hoping and believing in myself to make those decisions that align with my values and goals. I'm telling myself 5 years down the line that I'm really proud of you for living with authenticity and making decisions that are true to you, despite any pushback that you might receive along those lines. And that like, that's inclusive of running too. Like I have no idea what type of runner I'm going to be like in 5 years. But I know
you might be a miler.
I might be a miler. Yeah. But yeah, like I just genuinely believe that whatever I become, like that will be the result of making decisions that are true to me.
Very cool. Talk to me about balance. It's another one I like to ask about on here, and some people are totally for it and others say, no, balance is not something that I strive for. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
I would say I strive for more of it, because honestly in my life, there is some element of balance. Like I think I have kind of my daily essentials that I'm able to check off. But to be honest, like there are periods of time where one part of my life dominates over the other. And I think that's just a necessity. And I'm okay with that, because I think in the grand scheme of things, if you zoom out, kind of every domain of my life ends up having grown to the same extent. It's just kind of disproportionate growth, so there are parts of time when like, I'm really focusing on my research and that's advancing more than my teaching. And so, sometimes it's the other way around. And honestly, sometimes I get so stoked about my running that maybe I focus less on my professional stuff. Maybe I should be focusing more time on that. But, it tends to be where there's always kind of one dominating force in my life, and everything is just kind of still making progress, but slowly. And like I said, I'm okay with that, because if I maintain focus on the things that really matter in my life, they all end up progressing in some way.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that's a very succinct way to put it. I was browsing through, sort of to close the loop on the conversation, I was browsing through the comment section on your post, which is always a crapshoot on the internet. But there's a comment that stuck out to me, and I want to read it here. Someone says, "Wow, this is hands down the best piece of writing that captures the heart and emotion of how running helps connect you to your emotions. Hats off to the writer who so eloquently describes the yin-yang of it all. I was moved by the beauty of his feelings and how he conveyed it to those who at first glance might not understand. Please write more for us. You are so gifted and talented." To which you replied, "Wow, this comment literally made my year. I'm so honored and moved by your words, and I appreciate you taking the time to read. Thank you so much for this and for being you." So thank you for this and for being you and sharing so eloquently the yin and yang. And I think that's it. Like that's the secret, that you talked about not expecting perfection and embracing the challenges and riding the wave. And I think that 2020 and 2021 has uncovered the fact that everybody is dealing with shit, and it's this collective, we're in it together, separately but together type approach that is going to get us through it.
Yeah, I mean, well, that comment, like I'm pretty sure I cried when I read that, because like that's literally the whole essence of why I do anything in the world. But no, I really appreciate, like I you mentioned to me earlier how much you respect to like me lifting up other people. Like that respect is so shared. Like you are someone who I learned of very early on in my running, and I'm such a big fan of you as a person, because you are exactly that person too. And I'm taking my cues from you. And it's just like, I'm just so passionate about, like, of course, this isn't my profession. Like, of course, running isn't my profession, and writing isn't my profession, and writing about running isn't my profession. But I just like, it's such a privilege to be able to share with this community, because we just have so many amazing people who we get to share miles and experiences with. And I just feel so privileged. Like I never would have imagined 6 years ago when I got into my PhD, like I never would have imagined that I would become immersed in this community and like share so many wonderful relationships with people. And so, thank you to everyone listening, and especially, just thank you so much to you, because you have lifted me up along the way, and you're just such a positive force within SWAP and in the world at large. So thank you so much.
Well, it goes both ways. So thank you, and hopefully we can share a run or some beers at some point later this year.
I'm hoping to make my way to the East Coast. So let's hope for that.
Sounds good. Well, thanks so much, and we'll see you out there.
Yeah, thanks so much, John.
That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.